This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs the Playbook, and I have Maddy Alfano, the owner and president of Maria's Italian Kitchen. And I think out of anything that I'm missing right now, it's good food. I wish I could come out and come to your restaurant because I am tired of what I can make.
Well, that's a good thing because many people are feeling that way. So thank you for having me on your show. I am so honored. I've been listening to your podcast for the last week, and you've had some amazing guests, and I feel so blessed and honored that I've been chosen to be a part of this wonderful podcast. So thank you so much.
Well, your insight is going to be so valuable to so many people that aspire to your journey. And everyone has a unique journey and a unique way to get there. The commonality I always find is the consistency of someone that is persistent, and they must be what they can be. That seems to be the modern day Napoleon Hill with all the blessed people I have with me. You certainly seem to be someone that, life has happened to you, but you always seem to stay consistent and persistent in the pursuit of your own potential. And it always hasn't been easy for you. Where did that consistent, persistent mindset come from?
It's interesting. I think it started as a very young child when I was 5 years old, and I was starting kindergarten. And my brother Donald, who's only 362 days younger than me, my grandmother said to me, "This is your brother. He's your responsibility." And I thought, oh my God, I'm responsible at 5, right? And I always felt that I wanted to do good for others. I think it's just inherent in me. Even in kindergarten, when my mom dropped me off and all the kids were crying, I went over and said, "Why is everyone crying?" I was so excited to go to school. So I go over to all the kids, say, "Hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fun." And it was at a very early age, I felt very nurturing and encouraging because that's how I felt. I was so happy to be able to do things and meet new people and explore new opportunities. So I think that's part of it. The persistent is very important. When I look at what's happening today is these obstacles, and I'm looking at the opportunities everyone has to be better, to be a better person, to be a better business person, to operate more efficiently. And I'm finding that leaders really need to go towards the fire, not away from it. They need to know where the ball is going, not where it's been. And I've always played team sports, so teamwork is very much a part of my DNA, and it's a collaborative effort. So it's not my idea, it's the best idea. It doesn't have to be my idea. It's got to be the best idea for everyone. And that's how I've always operated.
It's a great perspective. I know one of the best business decisions I've made in my business was a few years ago to hire a chief betterment officer. And everyone thought I was crazy. And I said, well, think about how margins are made. I said, if I have someone who every day his job is to walk around, talk to every employee, look at everything, softwares, applications, outsource people, bathrooms, office, and just with an eye, a lens of, I'm going to make this better. I'm going to create margins out of this. Imagine the ROI on that employee. And then when this happened, I applied that to myself and I said, you know what? I better become the chief betterment officer of my own life. I better figure out how to be a better father, and I've been on that journey, but man, when I really focused in on it and took time to be better, it's amazing. I call it the margins of millionaires. It's amazing the margins that I've created. But you come from a family that moved from New York, which is
Hoboken, New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey. Sorry, I've actually lived in the Excelsior business.
Right.
Even better, North Jersey. And that area, though, is a great place to have brought Italian food from.
That's right.
I think there's a shortage in California of really good Italian food. But your family was in the business, if I'm not correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, my parents moved, when we moved from Hoboken, we moved to West Los Angeles, and my Uncle Maddy and my Uncle Mikey had Mateos Restaurant. It was a very famous Rat Pack, kind of all the celebrities were there on Sunday, and they would all fight for the same booth. And they had, that was the in place to have a meal. And the reason it was so popular is because my Uncle Maddy was a true Hoboken guy. He had salty language. He went to the racetrack every day, and he told everyone, don't wear a tie. He ripped off ties when people came into the restaurant. We're here to eat food. And it was really great. So my mother, when he first opened his restaurant, he called my mother, that was in 1963, to come out to California, to Los Angeles, to make the food in the kitchen with his staff of the food his mother prepared. So it was real Napolitan meatballs, veal parmesan, veal chops, really, you know, the pomodoro sauce, all the Sunday gravy, which had the meatballs and the sausage in it. So that's where that started. And then they opened a grocery store in Brentwood Village, which was it's a very affluent neighborhood. And my mother did things, I learned from my parents that the grocery store or the market is really what marketing is all about. They would make sure that all of the groceries were faced so it looked clean and neat. And my mother would bring in international foods. This is in 1968. People didn't have international. She had a little Japanese section, a French section. And I remember Steve McQueen's wife came in and she bought water, Contrexeville. And I said to my dad, why are people buying water when they could just open the faucet? He goes, this is very famous water from France and she wants it. It was like 99 cents a bottle. And I thought, oh my God, 99 cents.
Water.
So, yeah, for what? Like I said, who's going to buy water? Well, here you go. I mean, we spend more money on water than we do on gasoline, but I learned a lot from them. And then they turned their little garage into the first Maria's Italian Kitchen takeout. And that's when my mother said, you know, there was only pizza to go, or maybe Chinese. There was no real Italian food where you get fettuccine Alfredo, spaghetti meatballs, chicken parmesan, pork chops. So she had a very limited menu, but she filled the need that people wanted. And she would take vegetables from the produce stand and make ratatouilles, and then meat. My dad would grind the meat fresh and the meatballs, and they made their own sausage. So I learned from them early on that find a need and then fill it for the neighborhood, and then know who your customers are and how to take care of them. We were delivering groceries, and I was a grocery delivery girl. So that's way before like what's happening today. And I was amazed at how people would just hand my father a grocery list. I'd do the grocery shopping, check it out, and drive it to their house and put it in their refrigerator. I mean, that was in the 70s.
It's amazing because there's so many things to unravel that are applicable today. The one thing that stood to mind was the neighborhood analogy, because one difference, you know, and I'm a little bit more experienced and older as well, I talk about how big our neighborhoods are. And, you know, people can't grasp a neighborhood of 4.2 billion people and growing. And we haven't developed the connectivity for the micro neighborhoods yet. Because
David, not to interrupt, but what we do at Maria's Italian Kitchen is the word chain drives me crazy. I said, we're a family of restaurants in different neighborhoods. Each neighborhood has a completely different personality. They like different things. One restaurant wanted spumoni ice cream. We can't sell spumoni anywhere else to save our lives. Okay, so we'll have the spumoni for the guy that wants the spumoni. And what we're finding is that we have a West LA, we have a Brentwood, Calabasas, Agora, Pasadena, Northridge, and they're all different neighborhoods, but they feel like their Maria's is their Maria's. And they'll say, you know, I love the food so much better in Sherman Oaks than I do in Woodland Hills. Or, oh, you know, the Woodland Hills meatballs are so much better than they are in Northridge. I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad you love it. As long as you're going to Maria's, I'm happy about that. So we have to have that connectivity, but it's not like it was years ago. People now, I think, want to know their neighbors, especially today whenever there's earthquake 94 is when everyone knew who their neighbor was because everyone was out in the street, right?
Yeah. And, you know, speaking of that too, you ended up going to school. I mean, you're such a West LA person. You went to school at UCLA. And I'm just curious because that's a question for a lot of entrepreneurs, where to go to school, if they should go to school. Obviously, UCLA is one of the best institutions in our country and has continually evolved to be a great institution. But those educational institutions are changing today. What were some of your thoughts as far as just back then going to school so close to home? And then two, what are your thoughts about education today?
Well, I went to, Palms Junior High, married my Palms Junior High buddy, Jeff. He's a chiropractor in West Los Angeles.
You're like me. I married my fourth grade friend. So she hated me when I was little, though.
Well, we were friends. We weren't involved in junior high. Who was, right?
Right.
Only the fast kids. But so University of High School, then UCLA. I'm on the advisory board for the deans for the business school and also for the undergraduate. My philosophy about college or any kind of education is it exercises your brain and it takes you to meet people that are different from you. From my experience at UCLA, I took chemistry, physics, engineering. I'm not an engineer or physicist, but what I learned there is about process. I learned how to think differently, and I think, and psychology, that's really helped me in business. Plus, I've met some amazing people, kind of like YPO, right? You meet people from around the world. When I was in those engineering school classes, I met people from Iran. I would have never met them. I mean, now it's very different, but they were the first students that were coming here studying abroad. So I think that's important. I think education, anything you do is what you make of it. You bring your best self, you're going to get the most out of it. If anyone tells me they're bored, you're bored because you're boring, obviously. You can't, there's always something to do and something to learn. And if you don't, just keep asking the questions. Well, why do we do it that way? And I'd love to get back to your chief, what was it called?
Chief Betterment Officer. Yeah.
So one of the things I love about that is the same thing we're talking about education. It's being an observer of different people, of different styles. And when you step back and you observe what's happening in your world or in your business, you get a handle of what needs to happen next, or you can ask thoughtful questions of why is it that way? Why do we do things that way? And I find myself asking that all the time. I'll go into a restaurant like, why do we do things that way? Well, that's the way we always did it, but do we have to continue to do it that way? And in education, it's the same way. Now, I was on a call with the dean, Pat Turner. She's of the undergraduate, and they were way ahead of this whole Zoom classroom things. And there were many professors that it was foreign to them. They weren't comfortable with it. So you have to be nimble in business and life and just figure out what's the best way to get what you need to get so everyone can have value in it. So I'm all for education.
Yeah, me too. And I'm just curious how it's all going to transform, because my philosophy with also that perspective is everything that we're seeing, a lot of things are just accelerated. Even in the restaurant business, I think restaurant business was moving to more the ability to serve a bigger community with delivery. And as these different services, the gig economy has allowed people to have a larger neighborhood, and the advertising can be specified. You have such if being a student of marketing, looking at entrepreneurs like yourself, executives with YPO, you can see the evolution of how people market digitally through the context of what was important to you. I talk about a lot of times digitally a strength of a signal and a spectrum that you address. And you talked about your neighborhoods and, the spumani here, and people have a perception that the meatballs are better over here. That's a spectrum issue. You're speaking to a specific audience by their needs, and then a clear message, right? One of the things about your restaurant, it has a clear communication of what it is. And people know what they're going to get, which was, Ray Kroc's secret, that, everything had helped develop the entire United States transportation system, because people had a safe place to go to the bathroom, make a phone call with a payphone, and eat what they were familiar with. Whether it was good or not was regardless. It was the comfort of knowing the consistency. Transferring that knowledge that you have from, probably, working as a delivery person in the 70s all the way to today, what are some of the similarities that you see that are attributable to when we start scaling back to people sitting, in restaurants and start at least having gatherings of 10 or less people? So
your question is where are we going from here to there? How we're going to transition?
Yeah, and the marketing side of it,
I think the first thing the word comfort's very important. People have to feel safe and comfortable. So I always look at Maria's as kind of like coming home. We are our authentic Hoboken, New Jersey food. We're not Italy food. And you'll get a great meatball and lasagna and raviolis that are homemade. We're not the shishi type. So comfort's very important. Safety. Cleanliness has been a real issue. And I've been a real proponent of explaining to our community and our neighborhoods that Maria's has been doing deliveries for 40 years. My parents were way out. My mother and father were so far ahead of the curve because they needed to make money. So if you needed something, they were saying, hey, we'll deliver it to you. Great. So they needed that revenue.
We got Maddie. She'll drive it over there.
And so to your point, I have delivered over 1,000 meals in my Tesla to hospitals, fire department, police stations, with the generosity of our neighborhoods donating meals. We discounted them, and I personally deliver them. Now, the reason I first started delivering to the hospitals is because my staff was afraid to go there. So I put my mask on, put my hat on, put my apron on, made sure that I was as safe as possible. But I wanted to really let them know that we care and we're very humbled that they're doing the work they're doing. So that delivery. Now getting back into the restaurants. One of the things we talked about earlier is really watching where the ball is going, not where it's been. So early on in this, we all of our employees have food handler cards, including our delivery drivers. That was our step up over the other third-party delivery drivers. They were not there, and today they still don't have food handler cards. So we always had them with hats on. They understand sanitation. We use clean bags, the delivery bags. The food comes hot, hopefully. And no one eats the food out of the bags because they get so much of it for free. So my delivery drivers never had to put their hand in and take the rosemary bread out. It's happened a couple of times with the third-party vendors. The next thing is coming in is understanding that bathrooms, you mentioned the bathrooms, clean bathrooms, so important. We talk about that early on, about how important this is your home. And whenever I do a little manja with Maddie, I always ask people, if you're having someone over to your house, what's the first place you want to keep clean? And they all said, the bathroom, right? You don't want your toothbrush out. You don't want your hair. Yeah, you want to make sure that represents who you are. So cleanliness. Now, getting back to how we're going to operate, technology is very important. So I'm working on technology. I've actually been working on this for about 4 years with NCR Aloha, where it's a order ahead for dine-in. And I was doing this for my lunch crowd because they didn't have time to sit down, get a menu, wait for the server to come over, place the order. That takes time. So if you can order ahead for dine-in, David's coming in, what time? 6:15. Okay, David, when you get here, there's going to be a table ready for you. And we're going to say, okay, fire David's food. Food comes out, you're there. You've already paid for it. You want something extra? Okay, we have tablets, you can order. So I'm working with technology for contactless payments, ordering, but you still want that connection, right? So my thought is, people have this physical distancing, and I don't like the term social distancing because we all need to be connected. We're just, human beings need that.
That's a great point.
They do. So with the physical distancing, are we going to seat every other table? So I'm coming up with these weird devices like shields on wheels, so you can move them around. So you can see people next to you, but you're still having a meal with the people that you want to be with. And the funny thing about this is, with the physical distancing, is most likely when people are coming out to eat dinner now, they're going to want to come with their friends who they haven't been sheltered with. So what is the point of the distancing between the tables? You're already going to be somewhat not with your pod, if you would. So I think we've got to work that through. That hasn't been thought through very much. But I think people have to feel they're going to get the same neighborhood feel. They're going to get consistent food. They're going to be in a clean environment with people who care about them. I think that's really important. And that consistent message that we were talking about, clear, constant, consistent message from me and from our team.
I have an idea for you to finish off, and it's one that I've been thinking about, and it got some clarity talking, because I think you're the right person. With 75% of the restaurants are predicted that small businesses, women, minority-owned businesses especially, are going to go under.
That's right.
I have this idea that you brought up, this physical distancing, but people need to be connected. With Zoom, or even StreamYard, you could brand Maria's Italian, and literally with your timing mechanism, you could have people delivered food so that they could share a meal as if they were together, but virtually.
Right.
And so we could have together here our friends, because that's what we miss, right?
Right. Right.
And have the food that we like, because that's part of the experience is,
Right.
going there and going, oh, I love the Parmesan, I love the spumoni, right? And so, it's just going through my head with small businesses that there's so many different mechanisms to brand yourself, to keep the community together and provide them great quality, clean, healthy food, and still have that social connection, but physical distancing. Just a quick idea. Last thing real quick. You are so experienced and wise. I always like to end with your best piece of advice, either mindset advice or restaurant advice, whatever advice you could give us to help people to, be happy. That's my main mission in life is happiness is the best disease in the world. It's spread by witnessing, spread by eating too, by the way, and it strengthens our immune system. So any advice for everyone out there today?
Well, the word authentic is overdone. I think you have to truly be your authentic self. But for me, it's listening. Listening is the best advice I can give to anyone, but thoughtful listening, not listening with the intent of what you're going to say, but listening with what the intent of the other person is. What is that person really saying? Because a lot of times it's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying. And be very thoughtful about your next question. Like, what do you mean by that? And it's not a question, it's really understanding that person, because today people really want to be heard and they want to be understood. And even though we all speak the same English language, many of us, the intent of what we're saying doesn't always come through to the other person. So I always really listen and be thoughtful. That would be my advice.
That's awesome. There's three kinds of listeners, right? One, an interrupter. Two, no pun intended, is a waiter, somebody who just waits so they can interrupt you. And then, of course, someone that actually processes and listens and learns. And you absolutely are one of the third, and appreciate you so much and only wish you the greatest success. And thank you for all the great lessons. Appreciate you so much, Maddy, for coming on. Maddy with Maria's Italian Kitchen. This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.